All right, welcome back. Let's turn our attention to Benue State now. It's more like deja vu for the people of that north-central state after the state, of course, was hit by one of the worst environmental disasters in Nigeria's, in recent years in Nigeria, I should say. A recent flooding in that state have displaced close to 100,000 residents and, of course, destroyed property worth millions, if not billions of naira. In 2012, a similar situation displaced many more and killed about 30 persons. This was just 5 years ago. So why the state authorities and the people did not prepare for this latest round of flooding is quite surprising. Thousands have now been rendered homeless, farmlands have been destroyed, and worst hit is Makurdi, the state capital. In all, 24 communities have been affected, and according to the Benue State Emergency Management Agency, 12 out of 23 local government areas have been overrun by flood. The water is now receding, but there's a huge fear now of more flooding in the coming days and weeks as we are in the peak of the rainy season. Over 4,000 of the victims are now camped at the Benue International Market in Makurdi, which is serving as the emergency center. Now, both the federal and Benue state governments have responded with relief supplies. Local charity organizations and individuals have also responded, but the state says it still needs more assistance. Nigeria's vice president has been there to see things for himself, saying the government will scale up its relief efforts and dredge the river Benue, as well as help the state to construct drainages. Experts say what is needed to dredge the river Benue is 8 billion naira, and that would put an end to the perennial problem of flooding in the state. We were in the state recently, and this next report tells of the current situation of things as far as the flooding goes in that state. It's been just over a week since the massive flood hit, and people have begun returning to their homes to begin the arduous task of cleaning up. This whole area was one massive river when the deluge of flood hit about 24 communities in Benue last week. But the water has now receded. The buildings bear the signs of just how far the water level rose when the flood came. Among the returnees is Stephen, who ran a poultry farm beside his house before the flood came. Everything is now gone.
We lost like more than 700 barrels, and our fish pound was broken, and a lot of properties in our houses were destroyed by the water, and our road was filled up with water, and there was no way we can stay in our houses again. We relocated to our relatives' homes to stay with them for a while before we come back. My car parked here in the house was deep inside the water, and it's a car that I use for taking children to school. And about now the car can no longer start, and in fact I can't tell what exactly is wrong with the car. And I appeal to the government to at least do something to at least make us recover from the losses.
The returnees are now counting their losses while trying to salvage whatever they could. They say the most important thing they want from the government is to fix the basic infrastructure in the communities to prevent a recurrence of the flooding.
This place, since it was mapped out, the individuals here are the people that brought in the lights, the electricity we are using. The drainages you can see are done by the individuals themselves. No government assistance in any way. So the individuals themselves have been trying their best within their limited capacity to make it work. But I think at this point, it is not a matter of coming to share rice or all that. In fact, we didn't even get anything. But what we need now is long-term projects, long-term drainages that will help to prevent this from happening in the near future.
But not everyone is returning to their homes. Those who are not are camped here for now. It's a huge market that had not been occupied before now. The government has now converted it to an emergency center for the victims of the flood. Over 4,000 are now camped here. Each shop houses about 4 families.
Men we have currently in the camp is 531. We have women 642. We have male children 1,387. We have female children, 1,349 so far. Then children under the age of 5 is 585. We also have pregnant women recorded 92, and nursing mothers. We have 115. We have physically challenged 74. So that is the breakdown of the total household, which we register 546.
Conditions in the camp may not be the best, but they're fair enough. There's running water, food is served regularly. Each family has been handed a mosquito net, and the Nigerian Air Force has set up a field hospital inside the camp where the displaced persons are treated. And apart from relief supplies from the government, local charity organizations and individuals have also responded, but aid agencies working inside the camp say much still needs to be done.
The state government and NEMA provided raw food, but there are no utensils to cook, no stoves, except for the few some NGO donated last night. So people are hungry. Health challenges, we have the Air Force base manning the clinic, but they close by 4. What happens between 5 and the next day? We have children, over 1,000 children represented in this camp. We have 92 pregnant women. What if labor starts in the night? So those are the key top challenges for now.
Our problem now is toilet, because this is a market and the toilet are not enough for this kind of crowd. As of yesterday, people were complaining of diarrhea. See, children started complaining of diarrhea. We attended to up to 20 of diarrhea cases, and if this is not controlled, we are afraid that it may escalate.
Other than those problems, though, some of the victims here say they are satisfied with the arrangement put in place so far.
The money they are spending here, the NGOs, personal individuals and the state government, the help from federal governments, I have to appreciate them. They have done a lot for us. You see people cooking and sharing. So if they can join hands together and construct gutters, proper drainage in Makurdi, I think the situation will be better.
It's not yet clear how long the flood victims are going to be camped here and how the government plans to resettle them. The government has promised to scale up the relief efforts and further improve medical services to the camp. More charity organizations and individuals are also expected to step in with their own relief supplies. But most important of all is what the government does to prevent a recurrence of the flooding. All right, let's talk about the Benue flooding issue now in more depth, and being joined by Akimbode Oluwafemi, who is the Deputy Executive Director actually of Environmental Rights Action, ERA. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thanks.
When you saw the pictures coming out of Benue State, I mean, you consider the fact that this happened in 2012. Of course, what happened in 2012 was more serious. And then 2017, we had this flooding. Were you surprised that it was happening again?
Let me be frank with you, I was not surprised. Actually, the Makurdi floods didn't start from 2012. It started from 70s. The Makurdi flood is like the Ogunpa flood in Ibadan. So it's been recurring over the years. In fact, people can almost predict the period of the year that the floods are going to happen. It's usually between September and October. This year it came early, maybe because of climatic variations. And so
it means the people may not be out of the woods here because, of course, it might still
rain. Of course, if something drastic is not done, it's going to happen again. And I'm very sure they know it's going to happen again. I think why we cannot divulge the issue of disasters from environment, human interaction with the environment. I think what's happening in Makurdi is also telling us some things about the quality of government, the attitude of governments to issues like this. You mentioned 2012. And so what has happened between 2012 and now? We had it on record, 360-something people died, millions of Nigerians displaced. So what's the response? We've seen the response mechanism this time, very slow. Government didn't even pick this up on time. It only took few days ago before the acting president was in Makurdi, and before we begin to see some coherent responses to those issues, which means when you look at it critically as a nation, while we look at the environmental factors, we also look at the fact that we've not built the response mechanism. And I also want to tell you this, that the disaster issue in Nigeria is becoming one fat industry. government officials and people that are concerned see these disasters as means of making quick money that are not, accounted for. And why am I saying this? When 2012 happened, all right, across those several states, there were so many donations. People, pumping money. A case in question is a particular state where
those monies would have been used.
When did the president came from? And the monies were coming in billions and billions of naira. So where are those money? Where is the report? You expect that the serious government will call in experts and look at what do we do in case this happen? Where are the reports? Where is the awareness? Where is the citizenship education? All those errors that were lined up, they are still there. And that's the same thing repeating itself in Benue. Nothing is sudden, quote and unquote, in Makurdi.
And what is quite surprising about this is that, look, it only rained for a few hours, just for a few hours at night, and people woke up just to find everywhere flooded. The flooding of 2012, apart from the rain, we also know that the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon was opened. That dam has not been opened now. There are fears that the dam might be opened because we understand the water level is rising. So I'm just wondering what would happen then if water was to come from the dam, because this is just a few hours of rain causing so much havoc.
See, Deji, we all know that it's going to rain heavily in Nigeria this year. The issue is, are we prepared for the rains? Is there any rapid response mechanism for us to deal with it? Are citizens educated? Are they evacuated like other countries of the world where they will be told that, look, there's going to be hurricane, there's going to be rain in 3 days' time, you can move? In fact, they try to move their citizens before this happened. So back to your 2012, even if they don't open the dam, look, the water will be going southwards. It's anybody talking to us about whether there's any other community down River Benue and River Niger that could be affected. Nothing is being said. Look, these are the kind of interaction you want to see from your government, to lead the citizens to do, actions that can make them safe, actions to protect the environment, and also to build response in terms of disaster like this. Rather than, you see, when there is a disaster, you see them, when you see flood, you also see the flood of money. 1.6 billion naira is needed. Oh, we need help, or rice, whatever. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. I went to Adankolo, one of the communities that were affected during the Lokoja, during the floods in Adankolo is in Kogi State, close to Lokoja. And I went there just this year. And I still left families of three families, cloaked together in a room and a parlor. And when I asked, and they said the other 2 families were victims of 2012. And you begin to ask them, okay, what did they get from all those donations? And the rest of them, they get two iron sheets, 2 iron roofing sheets. That was all they got. So sometimes even when we have these disasters, not only are we asking government to respond, we also should be able to track the money. All right? Because disaster is becoming another cesspool of corruption in Nigeria.
And when it's an emergency, most times the monies will just go.
And frankly, I like what the VP says. And he says, look, we cannot continue to repeat this. We've got to look for the solution. Why is it that over the years, over 50 years that we've been as a nation, we don't look at the solution? Because as I said, it became an industry and people are profiting from it. And what they need to do, we need to plan our response to the global climatic phenomenon. And we also must find a solution to all these floodings that are happening, whether it's in Lagos or it's in Bayelsa, or now that we are tackling Makurdi.
The Makurdi flood, one of the reasons, or the basic reason that has been given, including the state government, has come out to say the problem is that there's no proper drainage around the city to channel water from the city down to River Benue. That the drainage is not just there. It's not the type you need to carry flood water, and that the River Benue itself needs to be dredged. And so what we had this time is, it rained so heavily, the drainage just did not work, so water could not flow into the River Benue, even the River Benue itself, because not dredged, so water started coming back into the communities.
Yeah. See, the story has been the same. For Makurdi, it has usually been overflow from either Benue or that adjoining.
And now they're saying the government wants to spend 88 billion to dredge the River Benue.
Wow. 88 billion is a lot of money.
Okay, 8 billion, sorry.
8 billion is a lot of money, but the point is, will actually that money get spent on that job? That's another question that citizens should ask their government, in terms of how, those monies are spent exactly on what they're supposed to be used for. And I mentioned the Ogunpa flood. At a point in the 70s, Ogunpa flood, people as wrongly assumed that it has some spiritual connotation,
connotation
until what was right was done in Ibadan. And then we now realize that, look, don't forget, that Ogunpa then was also perennial. Every year it must happen. So Makurdi now, it's almost becoming exactly like that. So if they do what is right, we'll be able to save our people. But back to the state government. I think we should not exonerate the state government from this. If you're following that flood very carefully, you find out that some of the houses that actually, they were built on floodplains, that washed away, were actually built without proper planning. I mean, do you blame? We're supposed to do the planning. We're supposed to do the layout. And then I remember there was an altercation between the Benue Land Authority and the Benue River Basin or something like that. And all of them were like, okay, who is responsible? The government is responsible. I don't want to know who is the actor or is the agent within it. But the state governor needs to call these people together, that is giving approval for people to develop where they will be blocking the drains, where they're going to, blocking the river flow. To stop doing that, they could make alternative arrangement for those people, so that people will no longer continue to endanger themselves in the plains of Makurdi.
Honestly, as you said, the state government too has actually asked the federal government to release the ecological funds to it, and that part of the reason why it was difficult for it to do anything was that all this while the federal government just didn't release that funds to it, and that this is a clear indication that the funds are needed, to fix some of these problems, especially the problem of drainage, and especially the problem of drainage.
I know funds are needed. There's no debate about that. But I personally do not subscribe to the blame game between the Benue state government, and the federal government. If you know that your city, and we're not talking about one suburb, we're talking about the state capital, gets flooded every year between September and October, and you've not done anything about it. And it's only now that you're saying, oh, we're waiting for... I really will not subscribe to that. But yes, they need the money. The federal government should make the money more available. But I'm also saying that they should not... Exactly, but they should ensure that the money is used for it was originally meant for.
And no doubt, this issue of allowing people, because the government giving approval for people to build indiscriminately.
Exactly.
You can't exonerate, you just can't.
And a lot of government officials have already been accused of backhand and underhand thoughts in getting approvals. In one of the communities, there were protests even before the flood about reckless, how some people were building on this drainage. And they were again now saying that it was because they didn't get money. But it was their state that were giving the papers for these guys to build on drains and block the flow of the water.
Akimbade, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions. All right, joining me now to still continue this discussion on the Benue flooding is the Senior Special Assistant to the Benue State Governor on Media and ICT, Ati Tekula. Ati, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Give us exactly a clear picture of what the situation is at the moment in Makurdi as far as this flooding goes.
Benue State of Makurdi in particular has been greatly affected by this flood. We have so much casualty in persons and property. Running to millions and displaced people in their numbers, in thousands. As a matter of fact, that last official count, 44,281 were displaced by the flood, and houses running to 1,560, which is a big number.
Now, what exactly is the situation at the moment at the displaced persons camp? I'm talking about the camp at the international market in Makurdi.
Unfortunately, they are not speaking from the point of the government. Also, I am not authorized to speak to you. So, and it is not the government speaking. You understand?
Yeah.
But right now, what I know is they are looking for ways to amicably look for not compensation per se, but make and engage the stress of those that have suffered the effect of this flood.
Now, some people have said the state government is partly, if not mainly, to blame for this because, I mean, it happened in 2012 and now it is happening again. A lot of people had felt, well, that the state government ought to have moved and learned from the 2012 experience and probably take action to stop this from happening. And besides, everyone knows that at this time of the year, it rains heavily and that, you know, your state gets flooded and nothing was done by the state government to prevent this from happening.
It is basically unfair to put the blame on the state government. It's a two-way thing. Our lifestyles too have affected it. People are built on drainage ways. People have built without permission from the Urban Development Board, and so they've blocked waterways. And you know, water cannot be stopped. Water must find its way. And so when you put it as a government, when you say the government are fault, they're not being entirely fair to the government. It's a two-way thing. The people, our lifestyles too also have affected us in this way.
I mean, you're quite right. It's a natural disaster, but we must not also forget that this is a man-made disaster as well. I mean, people dump refuse indiscriminately, build in places where they should not be building houses. I'm talking about floodplains now, and the government did not move to stop them.
You see, when you say the government should not have allowed it, there's a process. Many people want if the plan is approved. These plans are not approved. These are makeshift houses. If you destroy a hut today or a poorly built house that was built in 4 or 5 days, tomorrow it will spring up again. I don't know if you understand me. When these refuse are done, they are dumped at the night. Before morning, you find a new refuse heap in a place where there wasn't. And you know, with the shallow river we have, the shallow river we have, any of this will contribute to this flooding. It's a natural disaster. It's not normal.
Now, residents of the state have said the biggest problem is that Makurdi as a city hasn't got the kind of drainage channels you need to take out flood water to the River Benue. Of course, we know the River Benue has that problem of dredging. The government, of course, has said, the federal government now has said it's going to dredge it. But that the flood channels you have in the city are not just big enough. They are not the type of drainage channels you need to take flood water out of the city to the river. What would be your reaction to that?
Makurdi has a plan. That plan, there were layouts that were made by the previous administration. These layouts were badly made. The many layers sprung up without consideration or recourse to the original plan of the town. At that, when the government came in, part of what it did was revoke those layouts. But people had built on those layouts. So it's going to take a process to classify these people. And when the government had already given free of to people, there's compensation and all this involved. And so it is not just the drainage. Because when you follow, like Makurdi being a town that has one of the major rivers in Nigeria, there are little tributaries within the town, not just the drainage channels now. Even before now, our drainage system was enough to take care of the town. But with the growing population and the new layout would have been proper planning by the person that did this layout to take care of all these amenities. But it was not done, which was why we also we go to Ministry of Roads. But we could not do it on the mass scale as it was done. The layout was done as these allocations were made, because now you have to put in the financial position of the state, which is very bad, and we have to pay the compensation, because it is the government that gives it to people and it's what are paid for their own. So that's the situation.
Now, in your opinion, how prepared is your state in case another flooding happens?
Right now, you know that whatever has to be done now has to be financial. The only thing I can say is that we are not financially buoyant to take on this. We need further assistance. We need assistance from anybody, anywhere.
Ati Tekula, the Senior Special Assistant to the Benue State Governor on Media and ICT. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ, if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.